Irita TV, and we have co-hosting once again Nima Majur from our guest's house. Very interesting, over in California. And our guest, of course, is David Cole. We're glad to have him on here again. He's a columnist at Talkies Magazine, which you should go check out after the show. And he is also affiliated, or once upon a time was affiliated, with the Friends of Abe, which was a Republican Party apparatus in Hollywood, and then also went on to found, I believe it was Republican Party Animals, another Republican Party apparatus within Hollywood. And then he went on later to write a book on it called Republican Party Animal, which my understanding is somebody complained and now it's pulled off Amazon and you got to pay $500 for it for for a used copy. So
I don't get that money. That's not my choice. Amazon banned it, and the few people who have used copies to sell are making a killing. I don't get a penny off of that.
Well, send him a tip anyway. if you buy the book. And we wanted to have David on to talk about the fallout. I'm not even sure that's it. We'll use that word, the fallout of the 2021 election, because everybody's up and excited about this. And I was hoping, or me and Nima were hoping, that we can get a unique spin on what's going on here. And before we actually got into the 2021 election results, I actually wanted to give David a chance to tell us a little bit more about Friends of Abe and Republican Party Animals.
Well, sure. Friends of Abe, which is currently disbanded, but it was begun in 2005 by a small cadre of Hollywood conservatives. And they were the actor Gary Sinise, who, of course, Lieutenant Dan from Forrest Gump, and then he starred on one of the CSI shows, and Clint Eastwood, who needs no introduction, John Voight, who needs no introduction, Jerry Bruckheimer, the biggest producer of TV currently in the world, and then an old bearded man named Lionel Chetwynd. It was always very funny, these founders, because you had these A-listers, Eastwood, Voight, Bruckheimer, Sinise, and then the bearded guy who was a nobody, but he was a co-founder, so they always had to treat him like he was a somebody. And
hey, always grab someone else's reputation if you can. That's a sweet spot for him.
But the media, it was very funny because the media always understood that he was the guy to go to for juicy comments because he needed the publicity. Mm-hmm. Clint Eastwood has never once spoken about Friends of Abe. He was a founder. He was there from the beginning. But if you were to ask him about it, he would be like, I don't know what that is. It doesn't exist. Because that was the deal. We weren't supposed to exist. Now, it was originally started in 2005 just as a thing among friends. But when Obama got elected, they decided to open it up and make it a membership thing. And that's when I came in and I became an organizer for the group. So the idea was to get all of the people in the Hollywood industry, whether above the line, below the line, everything from actors to special effects guys and stuntmen, anyone who didn't like Obama, didn't like his politics, anyone who leaned to the right or even libertarian in any way. So we eventually grew to over 2,200 members. That's big.
That's significant
for an industry organization. In fact, it's bigger than a lot of unions are in various specified fields. So we would have one banquet a month, and the banquet would always be an A-list political figure. Dick Cheney, Condi Rice, Mitt Romney, Rick Perry.
Sounds like a lot of top-level rhinos.
Always, yeah. John, here's how big we were. Especially this is especially relevant as we are coming up next year to the midterm elections, where everybody is expecting Biden is going to get a shellacking, as Obama said he got in 2010. In 2010, when Obama got that midterm shellacking, the first place John Boehner came to thank people was to us. He came to Beverly Hills, and we had a big banquet with him where Boehner was like, thank you guys for all your Hollywood money and all of your support. And we did it. We've got the house back. And so that's how big we were for a spell. It was The reason that the rhinos loved us is there was a you know how when you drink that spring water, like Arrowhead or Crystal Geyser, the idea is the water has been filtered through so many rocks that all of the impurities have been filtered out of it. You start off with dirty water, but then you just filter it through a mountain of rocks and you get clean water. But what happened with Friends of Abe, there were so many members with different preferences, fetishes politically. You had your pro-lifers, you had your Jewish Zionist neocon types, you had your support the military, and that's all I care about. You had your nativists concerned about immigration. All of these people get filtered into a bland nothingness.
Mm-hmm.
What ends up coming out, and that's why I think people might have thought when I was comparing it to spring water that I was going to say they got filtered into something good, but no.
Yeah, Arrowhead sucks.
Yeah, they got filtered into something incredibly bland.
Yeah.
So that with all of these competing interests and competing factions, a guy like Boehner or any of these, or Kevin McCarthy and Eric Cantor, who's no longer in Congress, but all these guys could come there and they could say anything, and the crowd was just a blah, like, yay. And you could say any competing thing. You could say, we've got to go to Iran next. We have civilized Iraq, and next we're going to go to Iran. Yay. And also, we got to secure our border. Yay. But also a pathway to citizenship for our brown friends. Yay. And there was no singular point of view because of this filtering effect. Now, for me, I was only in it because I had the hot girlfriend and I was getting my ass kissed all the time. I'd love to be able to say that I was in it to make a difference, to change the world. But I knew what this was. I knew that it was just a bunch of Hollywood people with money who wanted to meet and be taken seriously and have their asses kissed by all these people like Dick Cheney. And so for me, it was more just a matter of, well, this is going to be a lot of fun. I got a fashion model girlfriend, 6 foot tall. There's no girl in the organization who looks like her. We had a couple of good looking women. The Christy Swanson, the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer from the movie, not the TV show. I think that was it. Patricia Heaton from Everybody Loves Raymond. I'm not sure if you would consider her hot or not. But so for me, it was a matter of, I love the getting in the weeds of organizing politically and just trying to deal, the whole dealing with factions thing is interesting for me as an exercise in human nature, trying to get the pro-lifers and the atheist Zionist neocons to get together. It was fun, but we never accomplished a damned thing. It was the most masturbatory exercise that I'd ever been involved with. I'm telling you, Dylan, if we had just gotten together in these banquet rooms and whacked off for 2 hours, the exact same amount of things would have been accomplished, but it would have been more pleasurable, frankly. So that's what Friends of Abe was. Now, Friends of Abe dissolved. And this is, I think, it's been covered by The Guardian with me as a source. I don't want to, as a disclaimer, The Guardian's source on Friends of Abe was always me. And so, but one of the reasons Friends of Abe dissolved at the beginning of 2016 is because they finally encountered a rift that could not be sifted like mountain water. And
I'm curious what this rift is. Tell me.
The pro-Trump and the anti-Trump people.
Pro-life, pro-choice couldn't do it. Pro-gun, anti-gun couldn't do it. It was pro-Trump, anti-Trump. Of course.
That's what killed the organization, because the pro-Trumpers and the anti-Trumpers simply could not get along. And really, it was more the anti-Trumpers. The anti-Trumpers.
Yeah, we know. We know what happened there.
There was no détente. There was no living together in peace. So when it became clear that you had this faction in Friends of Abe of very strong Trump supporters, including Ann Coulter, including a bunch of people who knew that he was going to be the president. They just kind of they felt it, and then you had the Jeb Bush people and the Marco Rubio people, and I mean Clint Eastwood was the strongest Marco Rubio guy we had. And I don't know whether that's because Eastwood has always been, his movies have always tended to be very Hispanic friendly. You know, he does these movies set in Mexico and with beautiful Mexican women. And I don't know whether that's it. But Eastwood was like one of these guys, if it isn't Rubio, to hell with you all. I mean that, to hell with all of you. So once it became clear that Trump was likely to be the candidate, then the infighting got so bad that the entire group just disbanded. Gary Sinise, the main founder and the guy who in the end was funding everything, Gary Sinise was literally like, okay, fuck this. I'm out of here. You guys can argue among yourselves. I have a family, and I don't want to deal with this because I've got a regular life.
Right.
I'm a guy who has a real life, and I don't need any of this bullshit. So he walked away. And once he walked away, that meant the money dried up. And once the money dried up, well, if you're going to rent a ballroom, that don't come free. If you're going to get a catered dinner,
wait, these big Hollywood stars couldn't like throw some money in a hat or something? Are they all stingy?
It was. It's actually one of the most surprising things to a lot of people who get involved in the business.
They're broke.
Is how stingy.
Okay.
Even the guy. You know that Clint Eastwood has money. You know that Jerry Bruckheimer is a billionaire. You know these things as a fact, and yet they always act like, oh, it's a tough month. I don't know. I'm kind of running dry this month. I don't think I can pay for that glass of wine. If you want to give me a free glass of wine, sure. Sinise was the only one who ever actually put his money where his mouth is. He would put the money into these banquets. Now, of course, he could recoup that because we all paid our share just in terms of paying for our dinner. But you still have to take a leap of faith. And I did this with my own group, Republican Party Animal, where I put on my own event. So the difference between Republican Party Animals and Friends of Abe is simply that Friends of Abe was secret and Republican Party Animals was public. So
I was going to say, let's get to Republican Party Animal because we do want to get to the 2021 elections at some point.
Yeah. And I'll wrap this up quick. But Republican Party Animals was the group for the people in Friends of Abe who didn't mind being public, who didn't mind coming to events where we would advertise them and we would have them in a forum where people would know about it. Now, this was before Antifa, before BLM. So for Republican Party Animals, I would rent venues on Hollywood and Vine and in the middle of the West Side and all these places where I couldn't do it anymore because if you're on the right and you rent these venues in LA now, you're going to have Antifa and BLM coming in to beat you with lead pipes. But we're going back now to 2009, 2010.
Back in a more peaceful time
when
we were just bombing Libya. Yeah.
It's actually quite astounding to me to think that one of my events, which was held right on the corner of Hollywood and Vine in a courtyard with 3 restaurants, and the only thing separating us from Hollywood Boulevard was a metal gate and a bouncer. But today, Antifa would be scaling that gate. They would be like the zombies in World War Z. They'd be standing on top of each other to get over the gate, and they'd be beating on people. It really was. We did a better time. We did not get hassled by anybody. So that was my group. Republican Party Animals was simply for the ones in Friends of Abe who didn't mind coming to these events that were more public. And we did, and this will help segue into the recent election. We were all very instrumental in that 2010 midterm victory. And the thing that it's very important to remember, because we're all riding very high right now because of the November 2nd election and the victories that were won. And everybody is looking forward to the fact that if you're going to read the tea leaves, next year's midterms look good for us. But as a veteran of the field who was there with John Boehner the few days after we won the 2010 midterms, it's always important to keep the perspective that we had this incredibly high energy after the midterms in 2010. Everybody's excited. What did it come to? What did Boehner turn out to be? What did any of those guys turn out to be? And that's the difficulty, because it's really easy to celebrate, you take a week off, get drunk, and think, we did it, babe, we did it. What made the election a few days ago a little more important is that it wasn't necessarily about party. It was more about issues. Virginia was a very important test case for the right, because Virginia is one of those states that was going very blue. It had been going very blue for a while. It had not always been blue, but it was going blue. People were calling it purple, but really it was going quite blue. But certain key issues, not candidates, but issues, critical race theory, transgender policies, the essential issue of parental control of education.
The sex ed in the education system as well. Yeah.
Yeah. This was not John Boehner being a party functionary. This was parents, grassroots people who were really upset about what was going on. Glenn Youngkin was not some electric figure. Glenn Youngkin is hardly JFK. He's not one of these guys who could electrify a crowd.
Well, not only that, I mean, just his background with he was like the CEO of the Carlyle Group or something like that. I mean, that's got Rhino written all over it.
Yeah,
yeah.
And that's what makes the election important, because it wasn't about a guy. It wasn't like Huey Long rose from the dead and was running again as a populist. It was a kind of functionary GOP candidate, the kind who often loses because they don't connect with the crowd. But what he connected with was a zeitgeist. It was just a movement among people in Virginia, mainly working class white people, but also working class Hispanics. And he still did poorly among college-educated white women, because everybody does, because, by God, Coulter jokes all the time on Twitter about repealing women's right to vote. And, people laugh. Oh, you're so
I ain't
funny.
laughing.
She's actually a little more serious than you would think. Because these college-educated white women just seem to be somewhat of a lost cause. But you had these working class whites who simply did not want their kids going to school and being told you're evil or you're lesser or you owe everybody for the rest of your life because you're white.
And then, if you don't mind me interjecting here, what's his name? McAuliffe. Is that right? I say that right?
What's it?
The Democratic governor who lost.
McAuliffe.
I said it right. Yeah. The comments of, I mean, regardless of whatever the schools were specifically doing, he said, I don't think parents should have any say in what schools are teaching. I mean, talk about like a meteor coming down and falling on top of the Democratic Party for something that, like, how stupid could you, stupid and out of touch, like, even if you're thinking it, because I know they're all thinking it, right?
Yeah.
But to be dumb enough to say it, holy shit.
You vetoed the bill that would have informed parents that they were there.
Yeah, I stopped the bill that I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach. I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
I'm Glenn Youngkin, candidate for governor, and I sponsored this ad.
Well, I would rank that McAuliffe statement up there with maybe the two top fumbles during a presidential debate. The first one was Gerald Ford versus Jimmy Carter, when Ford said on national TV, there is no Soviet domination of Eastern Europe. And we're talking about 1976.
Yeah.
So that, and then the second biggest fumble was with John Kerry, when he said, I was for that bill before I was against it. He was talking about some veterans funding, some budget thing. But just that statement, I was for it before I was against it, allowed the Bush people to portray him as a flip-flop.
Right.
And they ran it in commercials. I was for that bill before I was against it.
Well, and I would even say in John Kerry's case, to his credit, not that I like the guy, I mean, that's just a dumb way to say something that kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I was for it before I was against it. But
I
mean, there's no way. Like I could,
good bill, and then they changed it.
Yeah, I mean, I could see where he meant to say it one way and it came out another way. Okay, fine, but I don't think parents should have a say in what happens in schools. Like, how do you spin that and make it sound good?
That was
oh my God, yeah.
It was an inexcusable flub, and probably if you were to rank all of the things that contributed to McAuliffe's loss,
that's number one.
That
I think
one statement is right at the top because it was the worst possible way to address that issue,
and the worst possible time. Right, right as the election was getting ready, when like the energy would still be hot by the time the election. Oh man, woohoo!
Yeah. Because there were so many other ways he could have put it, and that's one of the interesting things. And this is what people who look at the landscape here are going to be paying attention to for the next year. The left side of this, the Democrat and the left side, misplayed so much in terms of not acknowledging the parental anger, even if they disagree with it. But the way that they put the parents down and they dismissed them and they would drag them out of meetings. And then on top of all of that, you have Merrick Garland, a man who is just startling to think he could have been on the Supreme Court. It was just amazing that we dodged that bullet. But you have Merrick Garland doing the bidding of the National School Board Association people, and then being grilled. One of the Republicans screw up 100 things a day, but one of the best things they did was grilling Garland about a week before the election, where they put him on the hot seat, talking about labeling parents as domestic terrorists, and just went at him and went at him and went at him. Ted Cruz was merciless. And Tom Cotton and all these guys were just merciless. You got to see this sweaty, shivering little.
I caught glimpses of it. I didn't sit down and look at a whole section, but I did catch glimpses. And yes, it was wicked.
It's worthwhile to see because it's just stuff you want to eat popcorn and drink a beer while you're watching it.
Do you think that they're going to feel that they're welcome to speak up at a school board meeting? How about this one? They could be prosecuted for using the internet, I guess that would be Facebook, in a way that might cause emotional distress to a victim. Is that a crime of violence?
Senator, I haven't seen the memo that you're
Why
talking
haven't
about,
you?
and I don't. Even from the description, it doesn't sound like it was addressed to parents. But if you
it wasn't addressed to parents. It was addressed to prosecutors. That's the problem. Why haven't you seen the memo?
I don't know why I haven't. I don't look at every. I do not get every memo that every U.S. attorney sends out. But if you're
wait a minute. Don't. I just want to be sure I understand this. This is a memorandum that collects 13 different federal crimes parents could be charged with. It has United States Department of Justice on the top of it, and you're telling me you haven't seen it?
Who's the memo from, Senator?
The United States Department of Justice, United States Attorney for the District of Montana.
I have not seen a memo from the District of Montana.
Not high enough priority for you?
That's not the question. I don't.
It is the question. Answer my question. Is it not a high enough priority for you when you're threatening parents with 13 different federal crimes? These aren't crimes of violence. You've testified today. You're focused on violence. That's not what your U.S. attorneys, they work for you. That's not what they're saying. You haven't seen it because it's not a high enough priority, or what?
Question of priority. No one has sent me that memo, so I haven't seen it.
What do you mean no one has sent you the memo? You run the United States Department of Justice, do you not?
There are 115,000 employees of the Department of Justice.
Indeed, and you are in charge of every one of them. And this was a sufficiently important case that you issued a memo You, over your signature, issued a memo involving the FBI and the Department of Justice in local school boards, local school districts. Your U.S. attorneys are now threatening prosecution with 13 different crimes, but it's not a high enough priority for you. It got lost in the mix.
I'll send again. I've never seen that memo.
That's what concerns me, General Garland.
On Wednesday, September 29th, the National School Board Association wrote a letter to the president asking the president to use the Department of Justice to target parents that were upset at critical race theory, that were upset at mask mandates in schools, to target them as domestic terrorists. On the face of the letter was in repeated consultation with the White House, in explicit political consultation with the White House. That was on Wednesday, September 29th. 5 days later, on Monday, so right after the weekend, boom, you pop out a memo giving them exactly what they want. Now, by the way, I understand that. In politics, that happens all the time. An important special interest wants something. Sir, yes, sir. We're going to listen to him. Let me ask you something, General Garland. In the letter, which you told the House of Representatives was the basis for this abusive memo targeting parents, how many incidents are cited in that memo?
I have to look back through the memo. I can't count it.
You don't know. How many of them were violent?
Again, the general report.
How many of them were violent? Do you know?
I don't know.
You don't know. And there's a reason you don't know. Because you didn't care, and nobody in your office cared to find out. I did a quick count just sitting here. During this hearing, I counted 20 incidents cited. Of the 20, 15 on their face are nonviolent. They involve things like insults. They involve a Nazi salute. That's one of the examples. My God, a parent did a Nazi salute at a school board because he thought the policies were oppressive. General Garland is doing a Nazi salute at an elected official. Is that protected by the First Amendment?
Yes, it is.
Okay. 15 of the 20 on the face of it are not violent. They're not threats of violence. They're parents who are unhappy. Yet, miraculously, when you write a memo, the opening line of your memo, in recent months, there has been a disturbing spike in harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence. You know what? You didn't look, and nobody on your staff looked. Did you even look up the 20 instances?
As I testified, the decision to send a memo is for an assessment.
Did you look up the 20 instances?
I did not read.
Did anyone on your staff look them up?
I don't know the answer, but it's not
But of
the
course
memo.
you don't. In general, there's a reason. Look, you started your career as a law clerk to Justice Brennan. You've had many law clerks during the year, during your time as a judge. I was a clerk to Chief Justice Rehnquist. I'll tell you what, if I drafted an opinion for the Chief Justice and walked in and it said, there's a disturbing pattern of violence, well, Ted, how do you know that? Well, I got an amicus brief here who claims it. You would fire a law clerk who did that. You're the Attorney General of the United States. This was not a tweet you sent. This is a memo to the Federal Bureau of Investigations saying, go investigate parents as domestic terrorists.
That is not what the memo says at all. It does not.
Is it what the letter says?
That is not what.
Is it what the letter says?
I don't care what the letter says.
You don't care. You said it was the basis of your memo. You testified under oath before the House of Representatives. The letter was the basis of your memo. Now you don't care about the letter?
The letter and public reports of violence and threats of violence. My memo says nothing about domestic terrorism, says nothing about parents committing any such things. My memo is an attempt to get an assessment of whether there is a problem out there that the federal government needs to resolve.
The letter on its face says the actions of the parents could be the equivalent to a form of domestic terrorism.
And that is wrong.
And asks the president to use the Patriot Act in regards to domestic terrorism directed at parents. This was the basis of your memo.
My memo.
The Department of Justice, when you're directing the FBI to engage in law enforcement, you're not behaving as a political operative because a political ally of the president says, hey, go attack these parents because we don't like what they're saying. Department of Justice, you did no independent research on what was happening, did you?
The memo has nothing to do with partisan.
Did you do independent research?
The memo has.
Did you do independent research?
The memo has nothing to do.
Okay, you're not
with
answering that
politics.
You've testified you know nothing about the violent sexual assault that happened in Loudoun County, even though it's one of the bases in this letter.
I read about it since then.
Okay. You told the House last week you knew nothing about it.
Not know at the time, no.
Okay. This week, the court concluded that a 14-year-old girl was violently raped by a boy wearing a skirt in the girls' restroom. The school district covered it up, released the boy, sent him to another school where he violently raped another girl. The father, who Mr. Hawley just showed you, was the father of the first girl. He was understandably, do you understand why a parent would be upset when your daughter is raped at school, the school board covers it up, and then lies to you and claims there have been no assaults, we have no instances of assaults in our bathroom, and that was a flat-out lie, as the court concluded this week. Do you understand why the parent would be upset?
Absolutely, and any expressions of upset are completely protected by the First Amendment.
Except you just called him a domestic terrorist.
I never called him that. That's not correct.
This letter calls him a domestic terrorist. You based a direction to the FBI, an official direction from the Attorney General, on this letter, and I'll tell you what, the NSBA is so embarrassed of this letter, they've apologized for it and retracted it, but you don't apparently have the same willingness to apologize and retract what you did. Let me ask you something else.
All of this stuff happening within a week of the election, I think it was because there was such a sense that the Democrats were going to lose that one. I think that's why the Lincoln Project idiots did that idiotic hoax with the tiki torch people that backfired so badly. It's kind of weird when you think, Dylan, that we live in a country where what might kill off the Lincoln Project is an idiotic tiki torch hoax and not covering for a pedophile.
Well, I mean, the truth is stranger than fiction, Judge Iwadi.
Their hoax was stupid, but covering for a child molester was maybe on a slightly different level. It's like if there's a heaven and hell and you're being judged on your sins when you die, what's going to be held against you more? You hoaxed some people with a tiki torch, or
you covered for a pedophile,
and you.
Yeah. Well, the tiki torch hoax was at least funny.
Yeah, it was funny, and it was so badly carried on.
Especially the black guys too.
Black, yeah.
And they're all tearing each other apart now about who's to blame. Were the hoaxers to blame, or was the media to blame for not asking, is this a hoax? And everybody's fighting with each other. But again, it was just one of those things where the worst possible thing to happen on the Friday before the election week, everything that could have gone wrong for the left did. But what we're left with now that the lessons have been seen, I don't want to say they've been learned. You can see the lesson without learning it. Now that the lessons have been seen, what are both sides going to do going into 2022?
Well, and then before you go into that, because this is definitely what we want to hear, there's another really important point here, which is the mail-in voting and the boxes of ballots showing up at 2 a.m. thing, which, who knows what happened, but it probably happened in New Jersey, right? And because there's the first thing here of I hate the term so much, I'm not even going to use it. You probably listener could probably figure out the term that I was going to use, but there's so much disappointment and despair that's been bubbling around since 2020 where everyone's saying, oh my God, it's all over. They're cheating. They control the system. We can't do anything. Why bother voting? What are we ever going to do? And I think, first off, this election showed that, if they're cheating, honk, honk, even if they're cheating, they can only crank that dial so much. And completely overwhelming it helps. However, in the flip side of that, now that the cheaters, if they exist, wink, wink, have seen it, meaning they're gonna want to prepare for it even more, right? So for anybody who's concerned about election security to say, "Oh my God, now here we stand a chance. Let's get excited about 2022," I think we need to step up even more and say, okay, it's even that much more important that we try to get these systems under control and not have ballots flying all over the place that can be collected very easily because they're going to be that much more motivated to do that.
Well, for example, what's happened in Florida just now, where the governor announced a special police to go after election fraudsters. That's being proactive and making sure that doesn't happen.
Have you been seeing Roger Stone's response to that?
I have not.
Roger Stone thinks Ron DeSantis is bluffing, and that this according to him, there's 1 million voters on the voter rolls that are phantom voters. I have no idea if this is true, and that Ron DeSantis, instead of going after those 1 million phantom voters and canvassing, is making this election integrity board, and I guess the guy in charge of it, and I probably shouldn't be saying this because I can't even remember the dude's name, but the guy in charge of the election integrity board, or whatever it's called in Florida, doesn't have the most respectable background for doing what he's doing. So Roger Stone's allegation is he's pretending to be securing these elections when Florida still has a major problem.
Okay.
But I mean, to your point, however, Nima, is that there, at the very least, Ron DeSantis saw that would be a good move because that's what the people want.
Yes.
Right.
Well, there's probably going to have to be a point next year where Republicans have to really focus on rolling back some of the pandemic voting laws that were passed that just made it so easy to commit fraud. But also, we do have to remember that when you look at the truck driver who unseated the
thank you for bringing that one up.
The New Jersey Senate. I mean, one of the most powerful guys in the state, and he gets unseated by a nobody who, according to the news report, spent about $153 on his campaign. That's something where if fraud was as rampant as some people think,
that wouldn't have been possible. Yeah,
that wouldn't have been possible. I think we always have to keep in mind that every election, whether we like it or not, whether it goes for us or breaks against us, there's always a mood. There's always a spirit. I think next year's midterms, the spirit is going to be very anti-Biden, anti-Harris. And I don't think there's anything that fraud can do to change that. There's always going to be a mood that the people have, the population has. Now, Virginia was such an important race for both sides, but yet it was called that evening. In other words, it was such a blowout.
Yeah, they couldn't go, okay, wait a minute, let's go find these votes. Pause for 4 hours, just a sec. Yeah.
There's a limit to even whatever monkey shines the Democrats can do. There is a limit. And when the mood is against them, because everyone was afraid. I was concerned. Everybody was concerned that Virginia was going to be one of those things where by midnight it's not decided, and then everybody takes a break and new votes are found, and then the next morning the totals have changed. But
there's nothing marked on the down ballots, and they're all for one candidate. Yeah. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. And it was such a blowout that by like 9 or 10 p.m. my time, it's decided. And so it's very likely that next year that's what we're going to see, unless something incredibly impossible happens where Biden regains his mental faculties and everything gets better. I mean, none of that's going to happen. I think we're looking at a massive blowout for the midterms. But what I was going to get into about whether both sides can really learn the lessons from what happened on Tuesday. The left has the bigger problem. The left's problem is critical race theory in these swing areas, swing states, swing counties. Critical race theory is going to kill them. Yet they have a problem denouncing it because we were talking about McAuliffe and how he couldn't just say, yes, I agree with you, parents, that no child should be told they are bad because of the color of their skin. And if that is a concern you have, even if I'm not sure if that's being taught, but I would agree you should be concerned. He couldn't say that.
Right.
The Democrats do not want to upset their base of hardcore leftists.
Right. There's a schism within the party, is what you're saying.
And black leftists, yeah. So the Democrats are going to be hesitant to say, and that's what's funny. If you look at what they all have been saying about critical race theory in the schools, they all are saying, hey, it's a myth, it's not being taught. But none of them are saying, oh, and it shouldn't be taught.
Right. I heard someone comment a while ago, well, if it's not being taught, what's the problem with getting rid of it?
Yeah, exactly. If I were to say that LA schools were teaching that you should torture puppies every day, you should get a puppy from the pound.
Is your name Dr. Fauci?
Yeah, like Fauci, yeah. Exactly, to be like Fauci. If I were to say that was being taught in LA public schools, the LA public school superintendent would say, A, that's not being taught, and B, if it ever were to be taught, I'd be the first guy to put my foot down and say, don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But they can't do that with critical race theory, because they know that if they say that it shouldn't be taught or that it's bad, they know that they're going to hear from the Ibram X. Kendi faction, the AOC faction, all of their most important constituencies like blacks, and they're going to get their ass handed to them. So that's the problem they're going to find themselves in going into next year.
And if they don't speak against it, they're going to keep hemorrhaging their non-absolutely crazy liberal side.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're going to force more of their candidates to be like McAuliffe and have to say these stupid things instead of saying the reasonable thing. They're going to say things that are going to give the Republicans a great soundbite, the same way that McAuliffe did. So that's going to be their very big problem for the left next year is how do we toe this line? How do we please the base and we don't upset them? Because the one thing that they need to avoid, they're always going to get the black vote, always, but they may not get the energetic black vote. And there's a big difference. When you see how many black Americans turned out to vote for Obama, that was an energetic black vote. In other words, they didn't just go because, man, I got nothing to do today, I think I'm going to go vote. They were like, oh, I'm going to go vote for Obama. Oh, man, I'm going to go. And they would dance to the polls. They'd do lock-in and pop-in and doing all that stuff. And it was, you could set it to music. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't energize your constituents, be they black or white or whomever, if they're not energized, okay, they'll vote for you, but they're not going to be excited. And maybe if they forget to do it or something else comes up that day. So the vital thing for the Democrats is, yes, they're always going to get the black vote. They're not going to lose it to the Republicans just because they speak ill of critical race theory, but they're not going to get an energized black vote. So these are all of the what we Jews call soros, the stress, is going to be on the minds of the Democrats. On the Republican side, the cliche is it's theirs to lose. In other words, they have it. They've got it in the bag.
They'll figure out some way to fuck it up.
They'll find some way to fuck it up, yeah. And one of the ways that they could fuck it up is to not confront these issues, not use these issues that matter to working class whites in swing districts and swing states, working class whites who don't want their children to be called evil because of their skin color and who don't want their daughter to have to change in the same room as dude in a skirt.
And potentially get raped.
Have to be fearless enough.
Yeah. And then I would like to thank you for bringing that up, because I want to take a moment to plug this idea for everybody, is that it's relatively easy to become a member of a voting member of, not, I guess, just any party, but specifically now we're talking about the Republican Party, to become a voting member of the Republican Party, because in a lot of cases, particularly in bluer states like Washington, where I'm at, nobody's participating. And I didn't know this until recently, that there's the party, and it's the same in every state, despite the fact they do it differently in every state, is filled up with precinct members. So, voting gets broken down into precincts where, like, it's got to be like less than 1,000 people per precinct. So it's like the smallest geographical political unit that we have in the United States, and that a representative from each party can get elected in that precinct. Now, each state calls it something different. In Washington State, they call it a precinct committee officer. Could be a precinct committee person or a committee person. You got to figure out what the name is. But these local parties, particularly the Republican Party, they're the same old shit that David's talking about right now, where leave it to them to fuck it up because they don't actually want to win, right? Yeah. This is the prime moment. If you want to know where to get involved and you don't know where to start there. Because even though they're elected, if your seat is empty, and again, it depends on the laws of your state, you can get appointed. You can just get appointed, and now you have voting possibility within the party, and these parties can be taken over. Get this old shit out of here. So, I mean, if you're hearing this and you got a year, and you're not doing actively anything else, at least go become a PCO or a precinct committee, whatever it is in your state.
Absolutely. And it plays right into what we were talking about being energized. The energy, it's very positive right now that the energy has shifted back to the right, because after Trump versus Biden and then January 6th and all of those things, the left seized a lot of energy, and the right was starting to get very downtrodden about things, and they were beginning to, in many cases, justifiably question if they could trust anybody. Correct. They can't trust the rhinos, but then you have Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood talking about krakens and robots and things. And so you had people on the right who were starting to get so downtrodden because they're like, well, is there anybody we can trust, or can we even win? And can we have anyone who even speaks plainly to us? And the thing I've said in my column for years now is you just stay focused on the issues. We are usually right on the issues. And stay away from personalities, stay away from distractions. Critical race theory is just a perfect issue to stay focused on, because it cuts to the heart of what so many people care about, which is simply that they don't want their kids to be abused mentally, psychologically. But
also, I just want to add, also stay away from obvious entrapment, like January 6th.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Don't go to armed protests. Don't go to and personally, and David, let me know what you think about this. I don't see any reason to go to a protest. Take that energy and go become a PCO of the Republican Party or run for office or something.
I agree. And this is actually something I said in my column a couple of months ago, which is the left protests. We've got a different path to victory. Our path to victory is not going out in the street and banging on trash cans and things like that. That's not how we win. We have better paths because we have the issues on our side. BLM has to go out in the street and smash windows because they have no substance to their arguments. I mean, their whole idea is
they don't have arguments, right?
That cops are killing black people in the street every day, and it's genocide, and it's worse than in slavery times. And so when your life is a fantasy, and you don't really have such substantive interests or subjects, you have to then just go out and do stupid things. We don't have to do that because the policies, the substantive policies and issues are on our side. As Steve Saylor has said for so many years, and Steve Saylor, my colleague at Tacky Mag, the left wages a constant war on noticing. And I'm not sure if Saylor said that first or if Derbyshire said that first.
Explain that further. They wage a constant war on noticing?
Noticing, because what rightists do best is notice who's committing the crimes, who are saying the really foul racist things, what's a man, what's a woman. You notice the reality.
What do the streets look like?
What do the streets look like?
What do the playgrounds like?
is there dog poop everywhere I
Dog
walk?
poop. I'll take dog poop over needles, man.
Yeah, human poop. Yeah, human poop. Homeless. Hi, San Francisco. The left is all about spinning a fantasy where none of what you're noticing is happening. They're like doing hypnosis. You are not seeing this. This is not happening. The right wins when we say, no, we trust that what this guy in Ohio or that guy in Florida, what they see is real. And we're not going to try to hypnotize them and say you're not seeing what you're seeing. So whereas the left is always trying to tell the average voter, you're not seeing this, the right is at its best when it embraces, yes, we know that you're seeing it because we're seeing it too.
And we're going to do something about it.
Come in and help.
Yep.
We want to come in and fix it. So that is, and I mean, prime example, just yesterday, and this kills me, but just yesterday, and it kills me. I mean, it was a good thing. I'm not saying it kills me because it's a bad thing. I'll explain why it kills me. Just yesterday in San Francisco, they collected so many signatures to recall their George Soros murderous communist district attorney, Chesa Boudin.
Which, sorry to interrupt, the district attorney in Seattle just got kicked out. I don't know if you heard about that.
Yes.
Okay.
And you know what that does to me when I see San Francisco and Seattle doing these things, and we were not able to yet in LA, and it just makes me furious because the reason it works in San Francisco and Seattle is that the people, the average, and they don't have to be card-carrying Republicans. They don't have to know what the Daily Wire is. They never have to have heard of Ben Shapiro. These are just people, but they know what crime is happening. They know that they can't leave their bicycle by the side of their house.
That their kids can't go walk through the woods because it's full of needles and feces. Yeah.
If we notice that and say to them, we see what you see, and here's one of the problems. The problem is your DA is no longer prosecuting property crimes. And we say, so we're here to help that. The grocery store up the street from me, about early this year, sometime I think January, February, I go in there and I notice that their liquor section, now this is a grocery store that's been there.
It's behind lock and key.
Yeah. Now, never had.
It's been that way. It's been that way here for a while, but yeah.
And so I'm talking to. I always go either very late at night before they close or early in the morning because I don't like standing in lines with people. So it's early in the morning. I'm the only one there. For me, it's almost bedtime. It's like 6 a.m., which is almost bedtime for me. And I'm talking to the cashier, and I'm saying, "Boy, I see that you just got you locked up your entire liquor section like it's nuclear secrets." And she was like, yeah, because people were just coming in, grabbing the most expensive brandy or whiskey or vodka or whatever, and just walking out. And there's no point in us risking our necks to stop them because our DA does not prosecute shoplifting, period. So there's no reason to stop the guy, especially he could have a knife or he could just sock you in the face or something like that. So our DA, who is as foul as the one in San Francisco and the one in Seattle and the one in Chicago and all these others. Our local, whatever remains of our local Republican Party, and I knew these guys from Friends of Abe, and they're just terrible. I mean, I don't like them at all. They're not that they're worthless. But what you were saying about getting involved, if new people in LA could get involved in our local GOP, people who are saying, we will do what they did in San Francisco, and we'll go to average people, and we will say, we all see what's going on here, and we can help. That is indeed the better way to go instead of protesting and wearing a funny costume and wearing a wacky hat and going to City Hall and
getting beat up and then getting entrapped by the FBI and then going to jail forever. Yeah, exactly. I absolutely concur.
With the FBI thing, one of the things in my own personal history, going way back 30 some odd years ago to the early 90s, when I was doing stuff that was involved with the Holocaust field, and we always knew who the plants were. Now, whether they were government FBI plants or whether they were ADL plants, because that did happen. Look up Roy Bullock, a very well-known ADL plant who would go to certain organizations in the early 90s and try to stir things up. We always knew the guys to avoid. The guys to avoid were the ones we would just be having some very civil historical discussion, some discussion about.
And then they'd recommend. So I'm sorry, I have this thing where I like to guess what the other person's about to say. So if it bugs you, stop me. But I think I have the answer, and it's they would recommend that everybody do something violent.
100%.
Yeah,
Dylan, you're 100% correct. I remember. I'm not going to say his last name because I don't want it to get you guys to get sued. But a guy named Carl, and there's many people in America named Carl, so I'm not giving anything. With this Carl guy, I was up in Toronto at a trial of a Holocaust revisionist who was being prosecuted by the Canadian government. I was simply up there to support free speech. And this Carl guy was up there going, we don't need to go through the courts. Let's get us some baseball bats and go to a temple. And let's teach them Jews what happens when you met. And I look at the other people around me, we're all like, okay, plan. There's your hello, Carl, and we're not going to talk to you again, Carl, because you're a plant. I said to him, I said to Carl, there's only two things you can be: a plant or a schizophrenic. Either way,
we're done.
I don't have anything to do with you.
Yeah.
No, there's no third option. But we always knew who the guys were, and that's a lesson that people now have to learn. It is the person who is trying to be the kick-ass, well, enough talk. Let's go have some action.
Let's go grab our guns and go get that guy, and we'll throw him in jail ourselves. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, these are the people you got to be very careful with, because that really is not our path to victory at all. We've seen how it can be done. We have a lot of good opportunities next year to really just cripple a lot of what Biden and Harris and the people above them. I mean, obviously, Joe Biden's not in control of. Joe Biden is not in control of his bowels. If you're not in control of your bowels, you're not in control of
your brains.
Yeah.
I wanted to throw something in here. Back when you were mentioning that, for example, we need to focus on issues, and CRT is one of these issues. David, if you haven't gone back and listened to our interviews with Mark Hare, I would really recommend it, from the Center of Self-Governance, because according to Mark Hare, he said that even CRT is simply a symptom. It's not the cause. And I don't bring this up to argue with you. I bring this up because I want to make a longer term game out of this, because what we're seeing with CRT, how is it that I mean, I understand how CRT could exist because there's Marxists in the world. How is it that it's hitting every school board? I don't know if it's every school board, but for the sake of argument, it's close enough to every school board in the country at the same time. How is that possible? And the reason that it's possible is because we'll just say our enemies for now, and whether or not we know that what that specifically is in our gut, we got a pretty clear idea of what that is. Our enemies really don't like the idea that we have separated boundaries of government. And I'm not just talking about, we've got a legislative, a judicial, and an executive branches. I mean, we've got a 7-boundary layer republic where we've got 3 branches up top in the federal government, a big boundary in between the federal and the states have 3 branches with 3 boundaries, and then even below that, within the states, you have boundaries between counties and the different branches of government in counties and cities, and even school boards. School boards actually have, I didn't know this, an executive, a legislative, and a judicial branch. And the idea behind the American experiment, we'll call it, is to obviously separate all these pieces of power out so nobody could get there, right? Well, people who like power obviously don't like these things separated around, or separated out. So about 150 years ago, after the Civil War, and this is really generalizing, the idea was we'll start introducing regional government that kind of overlaps these boundaries in order to start erasing these boundaries. And so when you've got the National School Board Association connected into the state school board associations, which are connected into the individual school boards, and where you have a situation where one parent can get mad at one school board, and that makes its way all the way up to the federal AG, who's now recommending to the FBI that the whole country and parents in the whole country be labeled domestic terrorists, right? Well, that's possible because we have the regional government of the National School Board Association and then the state school board associations. And what is absolutely magical is so many of these, a lot of states have either distanced or disconnected themselves from the National School Board Association. And what that's doing is that's starting to draw some of these lines back in these boundaries. And so when you're seeing stuff like CRT, seeing that this is a symptom, and this is, I'd like both sides of the aisle, of the political aisle, to start thinking this way as well. I mean, whether we think this or that on an issue, it'd be great if we could say, hey, that boundary should be there. But if the momentum's going to go in the Republican direction first, I'll take it. But if we as a society and as a country recognize that, okay, let's have a long-term game of putting these boundaries back, and we see something like CRT to say, okay, not only school board do I want you to stop CRT, I want you to stop the influx of where CRT came from, which is these, state and national school board associations. I think that would be huge if we started seeing candidates start talking that way.
Well, I agree with you.
And I think it's a great opportunity. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. The thing, though, because I'm mainly talking about what you present to the public, and one of the important things, and sometimes because people on the right tend to be philosophical, very thoughtful. I mean, they read and they tend to be, they think about these deeper issues. But I think
intellectual heavy.
Yeah, you want to always stay focused on what hits voters directly. I mean, I'll give you an example that when Reagan, and it's before your time, but when Reagan was in his prime, when he was running in 1980 and during his first term, he had an interesting coalition. He had a coalition of religious right on one side and libertarians, free market people on the other. Reagan was a strong enough central figure. He could hold that coalition together. A strong leader can do that. A strong personality can do that. Reagan had a way of communicating libertarian ideas, free market ideas, that was much better. You would have, and I remember this as a kid, you would have these people from this libertarian think tank or that libertarian think tank, and they would get on C-SPAN, which was a bigger thing back then when cable was bigger. But they'd get on C-SPAN and they would be like, now, Ludwig von Mises in 1853 wrote a treatise about, and, you just go to sleep. Reagan would just say, well, don't you want more money to buy that new car?
Yeah.
Don't you want to have, the freedom to work without joining a union? He had a way of making it less philosophical. He had a philosophy. One of the really surprising things that came out after Reagan's death, and several people published books of his correspondences, he had an actual philosophy. He wasn't just some dumb actor who was reciting lines. But one of the reasons that people didn't realize how philosophical he was is that he simply had a way of communicating it directly to voters about how this hits you without going too far into the issues that kind of expand a bit from you, your home, your family, your pocketbook, your work. And you always have to be a little careful about these matters that you brought up are very important for the people who get in the weeds to deal with. But I'm more talking about how a candidate or a party needs to communicate to average Joe six-pack fellow who doesn't care all that much about these issues. And so you've got to find a way to grab them and explain. And the way you explain why it's important, as I said earlier, you just see what they see. and you confirm to them, I see the crime, I see the economy. You've got these Democrats right now, and this is going to kill them next year. You've got these Democrats who are laughing off all of these economic concerns. Oh, you won't be able to buy Christmas presents for your kids? You got Kamala Harris. This is the worst time for a cackling hag like her to be vice president, because nobody wants to be hearing cackling right now. You have people who are suffering economically all across the country and everything. That's why they don't put her on camera all that much.
Well,
because when they do, she she does this annoying thing. It's bad enough that she laughs at her own jokes, which aren't even jokes, but she does this. I've known a few people who do it, and it's a thing where they're like, they act like you should be laughing too, right? Right? And that's the last thing anybody wants to hear right now, because people are. I'm a very average guy. I walk to the grocery store to get my dinner, and the prices are outlandish. Like chicken drumsticks at my grocery store that would have been $4.50 are now about $12. I mean, stuff like that is hitting families very hard, and they don't want to hear laughing idiots who are. In fact, I think it was just today that was it Janet Yellen? Somebody was interviewed by either MSNBC or NBC, and they were asked about the gas prices, and she's like, it's OPEC, it's not us. It's how funny these OPEC guys.
And you're talking about the chairwoman of the Federal Reserve, right?
Yeah. Somebody, I forget. I only saw it when I first got up, but one of the women, one of the higher up women in the government involved in economic matters, was laughing off the gas prices, and but again, I forget exactly who. But all this laughing, and Jen Psaki laughing, and who's the black woman who's the other press secretary? In my high school, this woman would have been called Blue Black, because there was yellow and there was blue. Blue Black is like really dark skin, and so whoever the Blue Black woman is, and that's a black term. I'm not
Whatever.
using that as a racist term. But in fact, I got in trouble with somebody. This is small aside, but I got in trouble with somebody a few months ago when I used the word nappy in my column. Nappy.
Get it here.
Yeah. Nappy is a black term that is used for people with greasy, curly, like black people with greasy, curly hair. You nappy-headed motherfucker.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's a term I grew up with, going to black schools. I mean, just certain guys just called him nappy-headed, nappy-haired. But apparently I found out that it's so not in use outside of the black community these days that people think it's something racist, or they think it's something worse than it is.
You've culturally appropriated it.
My hair used to be nappy. When I had a fuller head of it was always very curly. It would get extremely nappy, especially in certain weather conditions. Thankfully, time takes care of that. Time and age. And it'll happen to you guys, too, in one day, in 20 years. But anyway, let's go back to what I was saying about you can't be laughing this stuff off in what the right and what Republicans and anyone, whether they're donors or activists on the right, what they need to do next year is always remember, embrace what the voters are experiencing and what they're seeing and what matters to them. That was always one of the most, when I look back on my Friends of Abe years and some of the things that embarrassed me the most, it was when we would focus so heavily on the neocon part of things, and because the only reason that the Iraq War mattered was that our boys were being killed there, but the war itself, the reason for it didn't matter. It was like, oh, we're going to make something matter by sending young American boys to die there, and then it'll matter. Well, yeah, but they shouldn't be there
to begin with. Yeah,
it didn't matter until they started to go there and die. So when we would have like Karl Rove, we had Karl Rove at one of our banquets. And those were the nights the neocons were in their element when we would have somebody like Rove, because he would just stand up. This would have been circa 2010, 2011. And he would stand up there and he would say, nothing more important than our war in Iraq, and we're remaking that country, and we're going to remake the Middle East. And the neocons in the audience and all, they cheering and like, oh, he's great! Oh, this is the greatest man who ever lived. I toast my Manischewitz to him. None of that resonated with the public, thankfully, because Obama was doing so many things that were alienating the public, and that's another pitfall that we got to look out for next year. We can't just be anti-Biden.
Right.
Biden's going to continue to do things that are screw-ups. He cannot help himself. He has no mental faculties anymore, and he's surrounded by people who are hardcore ideologues, who are disconnected, ivory tower people disconnected from the public. So yes, we're likely going to cruise to a midterm victory next year, but it can't just be about being anti-Biden. We also have to be saying things that can help the day-to-day situation of the average voter. I mean, that was Boehner was simply anti-Biden, but then Boehner becomes the most powerful guy in Congress. And what does he do? You could ask 10,000 voters, American voters, name something positive that John Boehner did other than being anti-Obama. But that's not a positive, that's just being against.
Well, and that's one of the things that the left has going with it wrong now is that they still haven't quite gotten over, I'm just anti-Trump. I don't offer anything else. Yeah. I'm just anti-Trump.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. It's, for example, and a good example of that is it is easy to be against Biden's insane plan to give illegal aliens $400,000.
Right.
I'm sure you've heard about that all the illegal aliens who are tortured by Trump are going to get almost $500,000. So the plan is supposed to be. I mean, first Biden says it doesn't exist, and then that blue-black press secretary just the other day said it does exist, and who knows? But it's easy to be against that because it is so outlandish. It is so foolish. It is so idiotic. But it's not enough to just be against that. You also have to be in favor of sealing the border.
Right.
And changing our rules so that this stuff doesn't keep happening. So that's a pitfall for Republicans. A lot of them are going to fall into that easy pattern where they're simply going to say, $400,000 for illegals, well, that's ridiculous, and I hate it. And everyone will go, yeah. But then you also have to go beyond that and understand that Trump was trying to, in 2015, 2016, Trump was talking about an agenda that appealed to people because it was about shutting off the flow of illegals and regaining control of America for Americans. And so you've got to go beyond just being against Biden. It's going to be easy to be against Biden because he's not going to improve at all. The Biden today is the best Biden we're going to get because Biden gets worse every month. So appreciate the Biden you have now because the Biden a month from now is going to be worse, and the Biden 2 months from now is going to be worse.
Well, and then we could debate back and forth whether it's better he keels over now or makes it to the end of the term.
Yeah. The big question is 2024.
Yeah.
And but he probably, my guess is that he'll probably still be in office for the midterms a year from now, and but he will certainly continue to decline. Kamala Harris is acting like she can sleep her way to the presidency, and you get to a point.
She might not be wrong.
Well, I've known so many bimbos in my life, so many actress bimbos and young female good-looking bimbos, and Kamala Harris not even that good-looking, but there's a point where you age out of being able to sleep with people to get what you want. I mean, you're 23 years old, sure, it's easy to do, but you get you will always get to a point where that becomes a lot more difficult. And I think she has not come to terms with her age right now. And
that's exactly where I want her then. If she thinks she could accomplish X by doing her standard move, and the standard move no longer works, perfect.
One of a prediction I would make that I would stand by is that if and when Biden cannot continue, be it 2 years or 3 years from now, but whenever Biden bows out, the Democrats are not going to allow Kamala to just cruise to the replacement. There's going to be a fight. You're going to have Elizabeth Warren. You're going to have a bunch of, Elizabeth Warren, I don't agree with anything she stands for, but she's smarter than Kamala Harris.
Yes.
Much smarter.
And more likable, as weird as that sounds coming out of my mouth.
If she hadn't done that Indian thing, that's what killed her. I think that's the lesson with Elizabeth Warren is don't do that crap. Because if she hadn't done that fake Indian thing, she'd be much more likable.
Here's my DNA. See, I'm 1024th. I was right. What?
That's a case where you do something in the moment that you think will help you. When she was trying to get that professorship when she was younger, and in the moment, it seemed like a great idea to be an Indian.
Yep.
And I don't think she could look 30 years ahead and see how that would slaughter her in a primary. But I do think that whenever Biden either keels over or bows out or whatever happens, you're going to see an inter-party fight because there's a general feeling that Kamala Harris cannot carry an election on her own. So you are going to see, and by the way, my apologies for the noise. The garbage trucks are outside right now.
I don't even hear it.
So
you're fine. I don't even hear it.
So you're going to see, you're definitely going to see a fight because the Democrats don't have a lot of faith in her. She could have. Can you imagine when Biden put her in charge of the border? Can you imagine if she'd actually done something?
She'd be a completely different story.
If she had proven herself, even in the smallest way, at least do like AOC. AOC is a human wreck. Speaking about garbage, AOC is what you put at the curb there. But at least AOC...
She went to the border.
And she cried. She rattled the fence. She's like, oh, ay, Dios mío, ay, no puedo, ay. And at least it was a photo op. It might have been the lamest, fakest thing, but at least she did it.
It was a great stunt,
It was a great stunt. And Kamala Harris didn't even want to do that. She just wanted to cackle. Well, I haven't been to Europe. Kamala Harris, you have not been to the border. Well, I haven't been to Europe either. So the Democrats don't even have a good backup for whenever Biden craps out. They don't even have someone in the chamber ready to go. So you're going to see party turmoil.
And hopefully that schism grows and grows and and grows.
Yeah. So it doesn't look good for them. They when you look back to the optimism, I remember it must have been about 2006 when I noticed all my Democrat friends, because working in Hollywood, working the business, I have tons of Democrat friends. And it was about 2006 I started to notice all this optimism for Obama. Now, he was only a senator. He just recently become a senator. He had literally just become a senator at that point. And all my Democrat friends were like, he's our guy. He's going to cruise. And I would say to them, what about Hillary? No, Obama. And they almost kind of knew, even at that far, but even several years before the election, even a year before the primary, they knew that Obama was going to carry them to victory. I think Hillary might have been the only one who didn't know. And she learned real fast. None of that optimism exists right now. They know, the Democrats know they've got two duds. They've got a president who is a dud because his mind is fading every day. And they have a vice president who is a dud because she's incapable of really accomplishing anything.
Accomplishing anything or even pretending like she's accomplishing anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, she won't even go through the motions, which is alarming because that is the least you ask of any politician. The very least you ask is lip service. Okay, you don't want to do anything, at least give us some lip service so we can go to bed a little more comfortable tonight, thinking that you're on the case. So for the Democrats, the outlook is poor. For the Republicans, We have a very strong outlook for the midterms next year. We've got people like DeSantis, who there's a lot of energy around him. There's a lot of just very, I remember just a few days ago, maybe a week ago, seeing the headline, Yahoo News for that day was Florida now is the leader in no more COVID cases, but don't congratulate them just yet. You know, they had to admit the fact that Florida was doing so well with COVID, but then they had to add that thing at the bottom, but don't congratulate them yet.
Don't go thinking on your own. We didn't tell you to do that. Yeah.
The left is scared to death of DeSantis. And it was Kathy Griffin or Joy Behar, one of those redheaded leftist harpies, and I don't remember which one. One of them, like 4 months ago or so, said the problem with DeSantis, the reason she fears DeSantis is he's a more capable Trump. And that's a great quote because it is very true. DeSantis has proven to be a very effective leader, a very effective executive. And so there's a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of optimism on the right side. The right simply has to try to, for the next year, to avoid the pitfalls. Nima said, don't let yourself get roped into doing anything involving, public displays of violence or protests or anything like that. Even one guy doing that could be used to tar an entire movement. Stay away from fantasizing. Stay focused on the. There was years ago when I was a kid, I was reading a book about mental illness, about people who were battling incipient schizophrenia, and I read that if you start to feel yourself drifting into like a fantasy world, like your cat's talking to you, or your dog is singing and playing the banjo, the best way to bring yourself back, just look at a clock. This is back in the old days when people didn't have phones, they had actual clocks. Look at a clock, count the seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bring yourself back to the most grounded thing you can, which is the passage of time, which is the literal building block of every moment that we are in is 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, I read that 40 some odd years ago, but it's you can kind of use that a little bit politically by saying, when you start to feel yourself you wanting to talk about larger issues that are disconnected, go back and just think about the passing of every second and think about what matters in the most basic, real terms to people and to voters, and keep yourself grounded that way. And if we do that, the outlook is really quite positive. And I think that optimism that everybody's been feeling this week, I think that can be kept going. And the Democrats are certainly feeling it. And it could go back to what I said a little while ago. It's just going to come down to whether they can part with their base on some of these issues, or whether they're really just going to keep being idiots and get an even worse slaughter than they're probably going to get anyway. But one way or the other, it's looking bad for them and looking good for the other side.
Well, can idiots stop being idiots?
Yeah. Yeah. I think we can look at, obviously, Biden is not in control of his mind, but I think Kamala Harris is an idiot who can't stop being an idiot. I can't see her getting better. She's had more than enough opportunities to get better. Pelosi might eventually just cycle herself out of Congress.
Well, those are. I think I was reading in the Wall Street Journal or something that seems to be the talk, is she might be cycling herself out by 2022.
Yeah.
Thank the gods.
It's at her age, and with that fight between the progressives, the far left wing and the more moderate wing. If I were McConnell, the person I'd be going after is Sinema in Arizona. In terms of to try to woo her. Manchin is not likely to leave the Democrat Party because he comes from a long line of Democrats. You have to kind of look at his family lineage and their role in the Democrat Party in West Virginia for generations and generations. So I would go to someone like Sinema and I would say, look, you know what's going to happen next year. You know that we're going to retake the Senate. Become an independent and caucus with us. And when we retake the Senate, we'll give you all these leadership positions. And that. You're not going to make that kind of headway with Manchin because he's got a tremendous amount of loyalty to the brand. But Sinema doesn't seem to have much loyalty to anything politically. And I think she's probably a linchpin at the very least to help stall the Biden agenda between now and next November when he loses Congress.
Yeah.
But Sinema would probably be the one I would most target because she's a neophyte. Manchin's a veteran of politics, and she's a newcomer, and she doesn't have that kind of loyalty. Manchin goes back to the days when there were a lot of conservative Democrats, especially in the South. It was a common thing. People like Zell Miller and a lot of these, that there were quite a few red Democrats in the 1980s through the 90s. So I think Manchin's always going to do his own thing. And I don't think you can really talk him out of anything. But Sinema is probably the one who, were I McConnell, I'd really be going after. And my God, the way the left has been harassing her.
It's like the way they've been harassing the right. Weird.
Yeah. But that they hassle her in airports, they hassle her at a wedding, that's not even on planes. Yeah. That's got to be having psychological impact. How can you want to serve people who do that to you?
Yeah.
And that's another thing. I love it when the left acts crazy like that. That Beverly Hills got so much redder. Beverly Hills was already pretty red, but last summer when BLM looted the entire shopping district, Beverly Hills just got much, much redder after. And then BLM even tried at one point, I think last July a year ago, they even tried to rampage through the residential neighborhood. They'd already trashed Rodale and Cannon and Beverly Drive. And then they wanted to go rampage through the residential areas. Fortunately, Beverly Hills PD doesn't take that crap and stop them. But that also, that just, if you look at that part of the district, that part of Beverly Hills where the residential riot nearly happened, that just became beet red in November last year, because these were people who, I often say, one of the big differences between people on the west side of LA versus people in like Manhattan, people in the wealthier parts of New York City. The average wealthy person in Manhattan lives above everything. They're in some massive high-rise condo. They're not at street level. They've got a doorman and security guards and a pass key to get in the elevator. They're safe from everything. They are 40 stories up.
Right.
They're safe, whereas wealth in West LA is houses. Everyone's wealth in West LA is in a house, which means they are at street level, separated from the sidewalk by a mere fence, a gate, something like that. So we feel it more when BLM did its escapades last summer, 2020. It was right there. That you could invite them in for coffee, for cocoa, and then they beat the shit out of you and they would take all your possessions. But I think that's one of the reasons the West Side turned much redder, is because you feel it more when you're at ground level and when you know that the bulk of your wealth is tied up in your property, so you don't want to burn down. So that's but just making the point, the more the left goes crazy like that, the better. And if that's, I don't know your neck of the woods, Dylan, but if that's part of what is helping things in Seattle and all the Antifa crazy.
Well, I don't know about Seattle in general, but most people think Washington State is just gone and gone blue. They forget that in 2004, the Republicans lost a governor victory by, it was like 128 votes where they had to recount 3 times. We lost by 300. Oh, now we lost by 150. Oh, we won by 150. Okay, stop recounting. We won. And I don't know if you knew this. It came out I think it was 2 years later. I learned this recently. Not Gregoire, but Rossi. That was the governor, the Republican candidate. Took it to court. Won in court that the votes that got the opponent over the threshold weren't valid. But nothing happened. Well, I mean, you would think they would say, okay, we'll take her out and put him in because he won. But the point that I want to make is that it wasn't that long ago that Washington State, I mean, it was purple, right? And what a lot of people don't know is that this whole mail-in ballot shit started here. We developed it. And this, I guess, this is a tidbit. We should wrap up here pretty soon. This is getting a little long, but Kim Wyman, the Secretary of State here, is the only statewide elected official who's a Republican. She oversaw the creation and development and distribution of this mail-in voting system, and talks up and down of, oh, everything's so secure, everything's so secure, everything's so secure. And I mean, you can register to vote here with a utility bill per law. It's just written right into our state law. You could just read it. She just got hired. I want to say this. I don't remember the name of the name of the alphabet soup organization for the federal government. She's becoming a fart. Yeah, she is a fart. She's becoming a part of the Biden administration's like election integrity committee or something like that. So I suspect that she's getting rewarded for her hard work, and now the Biden administration can say, "Oh, look how bipartisan we are." That the person who developed all this mail-in ballot shit that started in Washington State, and I'm pretty sure was the blueprint for how it spread everywhere else, is a Republican, in name only, Rhino. Obviously, that's now moving on to oversee the entire country. So look out for the name Kim Wyman, everybody, in every other state, because she is not who you want overlooking anything.
That's fascinating to know that it started up there.
Yeah.
And I do remember that incredibly close election in Washington for governor. The thing I remember the most is how, I think you just alluded to it, but how they just kept looking for more votes. And the minute they got slightly ahead, they called it all off.
It's over. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that so clearly, because I just remember thinking about how ridiculous it was that it seemed so obvious that they were just keep looking for 10 new votes here, 20 new votes here, 30. And then the minute they get a little over the threshold, okay, we're done.
Yep.
We've won, and nobody else can contest. And
sorry, I forgot to make the point that I wanted to make about Washington State. I believe Washington State is a lot redder. It's a lot more red than people think it is. And we've had the mail-in voting for so long, and I think the fraud is pretty bad here. I don't know if it's California level, but it's pretty bad here. And I think the state's actually purple. We just can't see it because we invented the mail-in voting stuff. Yeah. And you can register to vote with a utility bill.
Now, to get back to recent elections, I was just wondering if there's any more, because we've talked so much already, is there any more bullet points takeaway that you have, David, that, just want to mention briefly, not get into, obviously we're not going to get into each of them in detail now. Is there any things that we haven't covered yet?
No, I would say that we have a good blueprint from November 2nd. I think there's a pretty good blueprint about what connects with voters, especially in swing areas where maybe the voters can go both ways. I think if the double barrel of paying attention to parents on things like CRT and transgender bathrooms, and then also paying attention to crime. And everybody's concerned about the skyrocketing, out of control, violent crime rate in so many cities. Now, in some of those cities, Republicans are never going to win, but there are a lot of areas where the crime issue connects. If we attend to it and if we take it seriously, it can make a very big difference. But that comes down to the party not being enslaved by this notion of, well, we don't want to appear racist. We don't want to go against
they got to get over that shit.
Yeah, absolutely. I've said this to so many people over the years. Again, one of the interesting things, having gone to majority black schools, I have so many conservative black friends who I've known for my whole life. Let them come to you. They will find you. There are a lot of great conservative black people. There are a lot of great conservative people of all races and colors. But you've got to have your principles and let them come to you. The pandering and the fear of not taking on an issue because you might be seen as racist. That's one of the most debilitating things in the Republican Party right now. And it's very important that the base, our base, the activist base, has to say, just get over that and stop using that as an arbiter of what you're going to support or not support.
Well, and then I also think, and sorry to interrupt you here again, but the right or the Republican response to being called racist is to explain why they aren't. I think we all need to just accept the fact that we can't explain our way out of it, because it doesn't mean the way they're using it doesn't mean what we think it means, right? And just say, I don't care if you call me racist.
Yeah.
I don't care.
There was a great moment unintentionally 5 months ago. Robin DiAngelo, the woman who wrote White Fragility, and she's just insane. She is a Goebbels. She is a racial ideologue. She's an Alfred Rosenberg. She's one of these people who just is full of racial hatred and racial theories. And she was being interviewed on her new book, which didn't do as well as White Fragility 2 years ago. But the reporter in the interview, and I don't know where it wasn't for a right-wing source. It was some mainstream interview. The interviewer basically said, in your book, you say that it's racist for a white person to smile at a black person. And then the next page you say it's racist for a white person to not smile at a black person. So you're saying it's racist if you smile, it's racist if you don't smile. Don't you think that that's a little contradictory and would make white people say, wait a minute, if it's racist if I smile, if it's racist if I don't smile, I can't win? And she was like, yeah.
Yep, that's the whole point.
That's the whole point. When that's where this stuff can so easily self-destruct, and why the right shouldn't worry about it and cater to it. And we shouldn't be thinking, should we smile or should we not smile? Fuck it. If you feel like smiling, get a person smile. And if you don't feel like smiling, don't smile. But we should not care what the people like Robin DiAngelo say. And that shouldn't be in our minds. And we should certainly never try to base legislation or how we run a campaign thinking, what would Robin DiAngelo say about that? These are people, these are clowns who they should not be in our mind except to ridicule them as an example of what the left represents.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. With that,
yeah.
I think we've covered it. Nima checked to make sure that we had all the points, and so I'd like to thank you again for coming on and talking with us. And it's great that Nima happened to be nearby and could be, I guess, not quite in studio, but sort of.
I did this to show everybody it's not CGI. He actually is here. So, but it's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure. I love this show. I love you guys. So anytime.
Great. All right, David. We'll talk to you again soon. And thanks everybody for watching.